Welcome to The Week Ahead, a podcast by SBM Intelligence. I'm your host, Veronica Pana Igube. Every Friday, we explore stories that are shaping our continent. Nigeria's crude oil production has reached a 6-year high, exceeding its OPEC quota and signaling a recovery in the oil sector. At the same time, Dangote Refinery has started pricing fuel in US dollars for bulk buyers. Does rising oil production outweigh the economic risk of dollar-priced fuel? Nigeria raised 5.8 trillion naira through bond sales to finance government spending and infrastructure, reflecting strong investor confidence, but also raising concerns about the country's growing debt. Should Nigeria rely more on borrowing or an increasing government revenue to fund development? Ghana recorded a 24,778 fraud cases, highlighting growing concerns over financial crimes. What should Ghana prioritize? Strengthening financial security or boosting economic growth? Joining us today for further insights is Uche Ejezi, an analyst from SBM Intelligence. Welcome, Uche, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Veronica. It's nice to be here.
It's great to be here as well. It's great to have you on the podcast, Uche. Let's start with our
Thank you.
first story where we're having a conversation about Nigerians' crude oil production. Um, for months now, I think like this year, we've had the blockage of the Strait of Hormuz. So we've had petrol prices go up. We've also had, Nigeria has also had the Dangote Refinery come into play. We've seen how it has helped for prices. In the ups and downs we've seen with petroleum, especially with the blockage of the Strait of Hormuz this year. But now we're seeing a kind of recovery, and Nigeria has reached a six-time high. But we've also seen the Dangote Refinery now moving to use US dollars for its bulk buyers. I just wanted to give our listeners kind of like a background to the story of how we're increasing or seeing a rise in Nigeria exceeding the OPEC quota, as well as what do you think this impact of Dangote now selling in dollars is? Does it have any impact on the Nigerian economy? Will it be better for us, or do you think it's better for the Dangote refinery and not for the Nigerian people?
Okay. Uh, well, to give a little bit of a summary to that, don't worry, we'll come back to that. First of all, I think the Nigeria exceeding its OPEC quota is a very positive one because the reason why Nigeria hasn't been able to reach this quota for the past, I think, 6 years now is because of issues like theft, pipeline vandalism, and all of that. But I think over the past couple of years, the ministry involved has worked on that, and there has obviously been an improvement in that because before now, the quota has our oil production has fallen below, I think, 1.2 million barrels per day. But as at now, is at 1.7. So that's about a 500,000 barrels per day difference, which is a great one. It's really good because as we have reached and exceeded our quota, more more oil production obviously means more FX returns for us, so which is a good one. But now looking onto the Dangote front, I think it is important to understand that Dangote is not necessarily going to transact in dollars per se. That's not what he's saying. It's just saying he's going to price in dollars. And to an extent, I kind of understand why he's doing this because even the NNPC himself and Dangote said it's sells crude to him in dollars. So it's basically like the NNPC is trying to hedge their own foreign exchange risk. They're trying to take advantage of Nigeria's exchange advantages while putting the risk to Dangote. So Dangote is saying, okay, if you, the government, are doing this, why would I, the businessman, want to be the one to take the fall if anything happens with, Nigeria's exchange fluctuates. Over the past couple of years, I think it has been pretty stable. But if something like that happens that it becomes not so stable, it may not be that much advantageous for Dangote, as at the end of the day is a business trying to also edge his own risk by saying, okay, since I'm getting most of my inputs in dollars, why do I want to price in naira? Because let's even go back and realize that even when it was pricing in naira, it was still basically converted from dollars to naira because everything that goes into that naira price is in dollars. And it could also fluctuate as dollar fluctuates. So now he's basically just putting what used to be behind the curtain outside for everyone to now see that okay, this is how it is. So where I think is going to affect us is now crude oil will be very much volatile to the FX market, which it has always been, but now it will be immediate, like very, very immediate, as Dangote is now priced in the dollar. If it happens now, probably go distributor that buys from him is going to immediately change their price. So I think is now putting the I think back on the CBN to make sure the CBN sort of keeps the naira to an naira strong and stable to a considerable extent. So it wouldn't be him bearing the brunt of Nigeria's foreign exchange risks. I think that's what he's doing, best of my knowledge. And considering that Dangote is a businessman at the end of the day and not a philanthropist and not the government, it is understandable from his own point of view for him to do this because even the NNPC does it. So why should he be the one to take the fall if anything happens? You understand? So that is what I think all of this is about. It would not necessarily affect we the people unless there's fluctuations in the naira value, which is now back to the CBN, like I said, to keep things in control, basically.
I agree with you. Dangote isn't a business. I mean, he's a businessman as well, so he's going to try to maximize as much profit as he can.
Exactly.
And truly, it's on the CBN to be able to see how they can stabilize the naira to the dollar.
Naira,
Yeah.
yes.
Let's move on to our second story, we're getting good news from Nigeria, right? Where we're seeing our oil production going up. But the second good
Yeah.
story is we're also seeing a lot of sales of the Nigerian bond, right? Nigeria was able to raise over 5 trillion through its bond sales. I mean, this shows the level of investor confidence in Nigeria as well. But does this, what does it signal to the Nigerian government? While borrowing can finance infrastructure and development, it can also increase the country's debt burden. At this point, does the borrowing become a concern? How do you think Nigeria should function? Should we keep relying on debt financing or for development, or it's time that we kind of focus on aggressively expanding our revenue from other sources so we can be able to leave the kind of dependency that we have on borrowing? But I mean, what are your thoughts on this? Is this good? What lessons can the government, with this money now? Because I think one of the most important things is like, I feel like is the absence of trust. So how can the trust between the government and the people, if I might add that. So
Okay.
now that they've been able to get this investor money, how best Or where do you think it's ideal for the Nigerian government to invest to be able to maximize the full effect of the bond?
Okay, before we get into that, I think we have to be a bit more uh, understanding or fair to the Nigerian government because considering that every serious borrows, every country borrows, and I think no country in the world has the capacity to be able to fund both like present obligations and future plans at the same time without borrowing. Because government is not just about providing for the present. You also have to like plan and speculate and then put things in place for the future as well. So I don't think any country in the world has enough money to be able to fund those two things simultaneously, and definitely not Nigeria because Nigeria does not have that much money. So I think it's not necessarily a do we not borrow thing because at the end of the day we do have to borrow. But where it gets a little bit tricky is if Nigeria has the capacity to be able to service these loans, because at the end of the day they are loans to the considerable future. Because I think we have bonds that their tenure is up to like 2050s, 2051, thereabout. So, which shows that for the next 20 plus years, we are still going to be servicing debt that was borrowed. And so it's a burden, considering that it's not just that it is all going to stop from now up to the whole 2050s and beyond. We'll still keep borrowing. So it's like a compound effect on the borrowing, which means that Nigeria's debt servicing is going to keep increasing, definitely. But the debt servicing is not necessarily a problem if we are developing the capacity to be able to service those debts coming in the future, and which is where your question about if we should prioritize economic development. I totally think yes, every country should prioritize economic development, but we also have a lot of underutilized strengths that we have to start exploiting at this particular point in time, which number one of them is our population and our young population to be exact. Because if everyone below, I think 2016, in the next couple of years is able to earn and earn well and then be able to invest in the country, I think this debt servicing should not necessarily be, it only becomes a problem when the country is, I think, stagnating and then everything becomes the burden of the government to fund and then to make things go round basically. But if it's a country that works well, that everything functions, it is growing, it is booming, debt servicing is not necessarily that big of a problem. And where a lot of these concerns come from is that people are saying Nigeria is borrowing this much and we are not seeing what they're using it for, which I think is actually the main concern here to ask what is or what are these monies being used for? Is it infrastructural development or are they just using it to service loans that have been borrowed in the future? These are the questions that we actually have to ask because these questions will determine what we have to look forward to or not look forward to in the future. Because if it's a thing of these bonds are to finance economic growth, development, human capital development, all of that. Then we know that okay, the future is looking brighter, and then in the future we can use the returns, and then we can use our let me just call it returns that we've gotten from these investments we've made, which is the economy, the human capital, and use it to service these loans. It won't be that difficult. But if it's a thing where it is like a tire that is just rolling. You are borrowing more to pay up, borrowing more to pay up. It's just compounding, and there's not really much to look forward to in the future to be able to pay this loan. So it just looks like more of stagnation in the future. But I think where we have to be optimistic about is the fact that most of these loans are domestic loans. They are from pension funds, insurance, all insurance companies. So it's a better source of investment, considering that if it were foreign investors can just pack up and leave with the slightest economic downturn. But when it is domestic investors, know that okay, they are with you, and nothing happens if there is a slight downturn or something. But then we also need to understand that these bonds, when they are being repaid, is also kind of putting money into the country, because the investors are Nigerians, the investors are Nigerian companies, the investors are in the Nigerian economy. So when they borrow to the government and then government gives them back their capital with interest, the interest obviously is going to be used in more productive endeavors that obviously would help economic growth. So I think most of this 5.8 trillion bond sales is not necessarily a bad thing. It's actually, to an extent, a good thing that is going to drive the economy forward. Where it gets bad or negative is if we are not building the capacity to be able to service the debts in the future. That is where it might get a bit scary.
I do agree with you, actually. And you know what you said is the most important thing is what is the money going to be used for? I think that that's really where the question is. If it's going to go on infrastructure development, if it's going to go on investing in the people, it's important, like you said, to know where the money is going to, because then if we know what to look forward to, and
Exactly.
we know where to look forward to. Let's move on to our final story where we go to Ghana. So Ghana is recording a nearly 20 almost nearly 25,000 fraud cases. What do you think is causing or driving this for a sharp, I feel like it's a sharp rise in financial crimes, and how do these increasing fraud cases affect, investor confidence, businesses, and the broader economy as well of Ghana?
Okay. When you asked of the cause, I think we know that fraud in itself is a symptom of unemployment. When the young people are unemployed, they'll obviously find creative, let me use that word, they obviously find creative ways to make ends meet. And then this is a time where digital infrastructure is growing, it's becoming more advanced, and a lot of these young people have the skill sets to be able to tap into the loopholes of these infrastructures, and they know where to touch it and it weakens. So you can't put two things together and not expect a result where there is young people who are unemployed and same young people are tech savvy. Obviously something will come out of it, which is the problem here. But then the question is, should Ghana prioritize economic development thereby, or should they prioritize financial security? Well, my answer will be to first focus on the basics, because and the basic in this case is financial security. Because you can't say you want to prioritize economic development just to erode out the fraud cases in a country that still has this number of young people unemployed. You first have to block loopholes where they can exploit, and then you focus on the economic development and then providing employment for these people to be able to thrive. Because without these three things in place, I don't see an end in sight. And to be frank, it's just going to increase. Because the more technology advances, and with the advent of AI, that everything is like AI can even tell you how to do these things if you just know how to prompt it well enough. So it's a thing of not giving them a motive to do it. If they do not have the motive to do it, if they are cared for, provided for, they have stable jobs, they have good jobs that can provide for them and their families, then most of the motive is eroded. I understand that there's also a place for greed, but at the base level, it's a thing of not having a choice. So what Ghana has to do, like I already said, is first to improve its financial security. It needs to do that because it can't even decide to focus on economic growth, remembering that these are banks that are being targeted, and you can't build a good economy if your financial security is not trustworthy, your financial sector is not trustworthy. The layman won't save their money. The investors won't invest. And if the investors won't invest and nobody saves their money, how will the banks be able to grant loans to businesses and stuff to be able to help them flourish? It doesn't work. It's basically like cutting it off at the baseline, which is the banks, because the bank's supposed to be the base that helps the economy grow through its loans and stuff. But if the banks are not trustworthy, investors don't want to invest, people don't want to save because of the fear of not getting your money back and things like that, then it's not a bright future for Ghana. So what Ghana has to do is first of all focus on its financial security and then focus on building back the investor confidence that it is obviously losing. It is with the rise of these fraud cases, people like you and me will be skeptical about investing and saving and things like that. So it has to build back this investor confidence. And when it has done that sufficiently enough, it can then focus on economic growth. Or it can also do that concurrently, but just trying to emphasize that what is most needed and what is most immediate to be able to bring more of a reduction in these fraud cases is to tighten up its security and then focus on development and unemployment. Providing employment, that is very, very crucial. And that is how we can see a more favorable future for the country moving forward.
I mean, I strongly agree with you, Uchi, where you pointed out that, the government has to ensure the financial security, address kind of the root causes, address the vulnerabilities in the system to kind of boost,
Exactly.
the confidence of users, of their customers as well, right? Because as you said, there's a greed factor. There's also that factor where people see a vulnerable system and want to attack it. But the majority of people who try to, cause these kind of schemes is because of for their financial standing, right? And it's
Yes.
the economic
True.
or financial benefit that they will get out of it. So, I mean, the government needs to also strengthen its cybersecurity infrastructure and ecosystem as well. And kind of also, I feel like investing in awareness, raising awareness to the people, because sometimes this vulnerability are exposed by our lack of understanding of those vulnerabilities, and it's easier to penetrate it. Sometimes, though they'll click a link, your bank is calling you and all that.
Yes.
So this kind of also educating the public of kind of the vulnerabilities that they can face is also really important, I think, as well.
Totally agree with you.
Yeah, thank you, Uche, for joining us on this episode.
Thank you for having me, Veronica.
It's really been a delight conversing with you. To all our listeners, this podcast is by SBM Intelligence. You can access our podcast by searching for SBM Intelligence anywhere you find podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, like, share, and let us know your thoughts about these issues that we discussed about today. It's always good when we read your comments and we keep the conversation going back and forth. For deeper insights into our work, you can visit our website at sbmintel.com. Remember that you can also connect with us on all our social media platforms. You can find us on X, Facebook, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn at SBM Intelligence. Thank you for tuning in to the week ahead. Join us next Friday for more updates that are shaping the African continent.